It is 4:01, and we will call the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority meeting into order. Please take the roll.
Commissioner Short,
I'm here.
Commissioner Greeno,
Here.
Acting Chair Wilson.
Here. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Item number 1 is ceremonies, but is Blake in attendance today? We can give him a shot at it. Okay. So that brings us to item number 2, consent agenda. Approve the minutes for the regular session, Tuesday, the 19th of November, 2024, and pay claim 9099990 with invoice WD-027875 to the amount of $33,950 to the State Water Resources Control Board for oversight of the Crescent City landfill. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda items.
Motion and a second. Please take the vote. Yes,
Commissioner
public
Short?
comment? Sorry.
Commissioner Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Acting Chair Wilson.
Yes. We'll go ahead and move to Director's Report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wilson. So I'll move through this quickly and just highlight the items that we're not covering elsewhere on the agenda. The Delaware County Transfer Station was closed on the 5th of December between 10:45 and 12:30 in response to the earthquake off the coast of Rio Del and the associated tsunami evacuation order. I'll talk about that a little bit further in the meeting. The consent agenda, you just approved a payment to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for the oversight of the Crescent City landfill. And I'll take this moment to highlight that years ago we did apply and were awarded a reduction in the threat and complexity rating. And so that gives us savings every single year. And just this year alone, had we stayed at the 1A threat complexity rating, we would have paid an extra $44,517 just this year. So even though $33,000 feels like a lot of money, it's still much less than it could have been. So glad that we paid that. Upcoming on January 29th at 3 o'clock here in this building, we will have a meeting, the first community planning meeting related to the SB 1383, and we appreciate the Del Norte and adjacent tribal lands Food Council's coordination of those meetings, but we'll talk about that more on the January meeting. But just wanted to give you a heads up. That was an open public meeting for anyone interested in the planning and possibilities for managing organics and food rescue and redistribution in Del Norte County in the years ahead. Moving on. Also, the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force this coming month will be engaging on the 5-year review of the AB 939 plans, which are also known as the Regional Agency Integrated Waste Management Plan. But there's a requirement under the law that the task force has to review that every 5 years. And in fact, that is the main driver for their existence. So that will be done in the coming months. And essentially what that is they're reviewing all of our recycling and composting programs, seeing whether or not they fit the needs of the community, and then sending a letter to Cal Recycle in that regard. And then Cal Recycle considers that letter as they review our program. Also, on advocacy and outreach, I continue to volunteer with a variety of different hats. And one of those is the Rural Counties Environmental Services Joint Powers Authority. And I'm chair of their technical advisory group. So essentially the meetings of the ESJPA start with the business meeting in the morning. And then the afternoon, we essentially cover topics that are useful trainings for everybody. So for instance, because I'm chair of that group, next month we'll be talking about the SB 1383 implementation record training. And that's actually a fairly thick document with a whole bunch of check boxes. And it's one of those things we could use training on. So one more value for the rural counties there. And then actually towards that end, I would like to let you know that I received the President's Award for the Rural Counties Representative at the last meeting, and it's awarded to the member of the RCRC County family who, in the words of the RCRC's Environmental Services Joint Powers Authority Director, Stacy Heaton, takes the time to go above and beyond their everyday roles to support and strengthen California rural counties. This award is not given out every year, and it's fairly rare that it's given out to a non-elected official because, as you know, the rural counties representatives of California are mostly, the main board is all elected officials, and then the ESJPA is essentially the technical folks like staff folks like myself who will implement programs. That's the final. Has borne fruit and has been helpful to not just our counties, but many different rural counties. So thank you for that. Thank you for that support.
Congratulations, Ted. Thank you for your hard work.
I'd be happy to continue if you'd like, or if there's any questions on that section.
I was going to make you toot your own horn here with this if you hadn't already. Yeah, when Patrick asked me about you and this award a couple of months ago, I was very much in favor. So yeah, thank you for the work you do in this realm and in your accomplishments there. This is well deserved. Thank you, Ted.
Congratulations.
Right. So regarding the financial reports, first one is the balance sheet. Of course, that's kind of a cash, just a cash report, and you can see we have 2.8 million in the bank plus 198,000 for last month's rent. Accounts receivable is up to date, thanks to Kathy. Looking at claims approved by director in the last month, the largest payment, of course, goes to Hambro WSG for the good services they provide at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. And the second two largest expenses are to the auditor's office for the interfund cost plan to pay for the IT and auditing services and personnel services that we lean on the county for. And then the third largest expense this month went to Dave Mason doing business as DDR, and that's under the cleanup grant that we have with U.S. Forest Services. So he was cleaning up property on the U.S. Forest Service. Looking at our grand totals for November, we brought in 140,000, and in general, that's a pretty good month for the winter, which is usually the slowest period of the year. But I did hand out an updated report regarding our revenues, and you can see that our revenues halfway through the fiscal year are 102,880 ahead of budget. So in general, our finances. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, one last thing I forgot to mention as part of the director's report is, of course, we do appreciate Hambro WSG continuing to support the tree cycling program we have. A lot of people have holiday trees, and shortly after Christmas, they're looking for a way to manage those properly. And thanks to Hambro WSG, we do receive those at the Del Norte County Transfer Station and the Gasky Transfer Station for no charge. So, and if you're a Recology Del Norte customer, they will collect your tree at your curbside if you call them in advance at 464-4181. So thanks to both Recology and to Hambro WSG for supporting that program. It runs through December 26th to January 31st. So if you bring in a holiday tree after that point, you will have to pay the brush rate. Also, if you're leaving a tree at curbside, we ask that the tree not be any longer than 6 feet. So if you've got a longer tree, you want to cut that in. And again, no flocking, remove all the tinsel and ornaments and any metal stand. Okay, that completes the director's report.
Just too much stuff. And that'll bring us. That'll bring us to item number 7, Solid Waste Authority matters. 7.1 discussion of possible action regarding responses and lessons learned from earthquake tsunami warnings December 5th, 2024.
Yeah, so this is one more time to just tell you how awesome Kira is, because I happened to be out of the office that morning, and Kira did everything to the best of her abilities, and I think did it very, very well. essentially, when the tsunami, when the earthquake happened, Kira closed the gates, not letting anybody else in. It's exactly the right thing to do. Once we got the evacuation order, the transfer station was closed completely. Everybody was cleared out of it, and they evacuated to the evacuation location. Having received the same notice, but having been at home at that point, I immediately notified the radio stations and sent a text to all the board members so everybody was as informed as they could be that our facility was closed. However, moving forward, I think it's safe to say if there's ever a tsunami evacuation order issued, the transfer station will be closed. So everybody can just plan on that. You don't have to wait for the radio announcement. If there's an evacuation order, transfer station's closed. And I'd love Kira to add whatever experience that she had in that process.
We got a huge volume of calls in the very short time that we were actually evacuated. And I remember that at some point, our agency location was a muster point. So I'm wondering if people might think that it's still that case, but it's now in the inundation zone. So it's not the place to go when you evacuate.
So those of you who might have been thinking the evacuation point for you in the harbor might be the transfer station, the bottom line is keep going up the hill. And I think that parking lot in front of the Elk Valley Tribal Office is going to be a good muster location.
That's
a
our
little
muster
further
location,
uphill,
yeah.
that's where we go. So if you're headed for the transfer station, you've got an evacuation
Keep
order,
going.
keep going. And I'd just like to acknowledge it was a pretty good drill. So we returned and reopened after the evacuation order was lifted. We also, I'd also like to commend Recology as they were trying to adapt to that very challenging situation. And so it was real good to be able to communicate, yeah, the transfer station's closed, so probably don't want to send trucks there right now. But on the whole, very good drill, and lucky there wasn't further damage or concern. Okay, any questions on that?
None? Any public comment?
All right. So we are now to the item 7.2, and I still hoping Blake might make it. He will. Okay. All right. Well, then you can go back to that first item whenever you care to, but we would like a vote on that. But we do have folks for the next item, so maybe we should take that first. Okay. All right. Could I have the PowerPoint, please, Mackenzie?
7.2, discussion of possible action regarding authority supporting programs addressing solid waste related blight, dumping, litter, including Delaware Mission Possible and code enforcement voucher program.
Okay. Gonna have to tell you. Next slide, please. Is it? Sure. Okay. Oops, hello. Okay. So this is a modified version of a presentation I made to the illegal dumping conference that was held in Alameda, and I also serve as the chair of the strategies subcommittee of the illegal dumping technical advisory council that's coordinated by Cal Recycle staff, but it's comprised entirely of volunteers. Essentially, this is a group that tries to learn best practices, learn from each other, figuring out how everybody else is addressing illegal dumping. One of the things that makes our community more challenging to address this concern than others is we don't have mandatory collection. A lot of urban communities do, but essentially you have to sign up for garbage service. We don't have that, and I'm not suggesting that we should, but it does create a circumstance where there are people who are self-haulers, and when there's self-haulers, there's always the chance that people don't get up to the right place in terms of disposal. So here's the different dumping sources and strategies we have in Del Norte. For evictions, which used to be a major source of dumping, we've now created administrative citations and a process under Solid Waste Authority ordinances For dumping, again, we have the administrative citations and the support of code enforcement. And for encampments, we have our very own Mission Possible, which you'll hear about in just a moment. And for abandoned vehicles, trailers, and RVs, they're frequently filled with trash. And once again, Dominic, through the code enforcement deal and the AVA, deals with that. We also have container overwhelm or just accumulated trash-related blight. And so for that, we have a voucher program, which Dominic will tell us a little bit more about. And there's, of course, allocated franchise bin pulls, which have on occasion been used for neighborhood cleanups. We also have litter, windblown, and stormwater issues, and we address that through river and beach cleanups and advocacy and with CPSC partners during stormwater. The CPSC is the California Product Stewardship Council, and I'm vice president for that. So evictions and dumping ordinances, oftentimes there are addresses associated with ordinances, and then we can trace back to make sure the people who are responsible for those materials are aware that their materials did not get to the right location. So we try to return those to the center. So the purposes of the authority ordinances include reducing blight and illegal dumping, increasing resource recovery, encouraging and enforcing proper disposal and recycling, and direct regulated materials to appropriate facilities. We also want to firmly establish, and have done so since these were adopted in 2008, the responsibilities for each person, property owner, business, and government agency to manage their associated discards using methods that don't diminish the values of Delaware County. And we want to establish enforcement procedures regarding the collections franchise. So what's not allowed? Unsightly or unhealthy accumulation of solid waste, adding or removing materials from trash or recycling containers that are not your own, hauling waste or recyclables for a fee except under the franchise agreement, hiring of non-franchise collectors of trash. And so everybody has to participate. That includes residential property owners. Either they have to provide their own trash and recycling services by the owner, or they need to subscribe to franchise collection services for those properties. And then businesses also have similar obligations, though they are not required necessarily to provide collection. There is an administrative citation process, which Dominic could explain at length, but essentially our goal is to achieve compliance, not necessarily to collect fines. We've never really been interested in collecting the fines. We're really most interested in keeping things clean. Abandoned vehicle abatement, again, under Dominic, it's funded by a service authority fee at vehicle registration through DMV, and it supports Dominic and his activities, and regularly receive quarterly reports about that. So we also have container overwhelm at various times. We've talked about that, either in Smith River or other facilities, but that's an ongoing concern. And then we've got volunteer beach and river cleanups, and oftentimes coordinated by the Red Parks Conservancy and or Smith River Alliance. Appreciate that partnership. And then we've now got paired street side containers that aren't going to blow over, as the pizza box is demonstrated there, some of the problems prior. So now let's talk about Mission Possible. And actually, I'll just run through the slides and you can talk us through. Okay. I'd like to introduce Daphne Cortez Lambert, who coordinates the whole Mission Possible organization and their activities. We really appreciate that. Well, there he is on the first slide. Oh, it's not him. Sorry about that. Okay.
To serve them. What are the solutions? What are the solutions that are going to work for them? So I had spoke to one man, and he's passed away since. And he told me, I said, look, you're making yourselves look bad with the garbage everywhere. Something has got to be done. And he said, well, what do you expect us to do? We don't even have food and water. How are we going to get rid of our garbage? All we can do is burn or leave it somewhere. And I said, well, what is your solution? He said, well, what about if we had bags? We aren't animals, and we would gather that stuff up and we would clean up our area. We don't want to live like this. And so I went to Ted with this crazy idea, and we kind of went back and forth about it. And he decided to, with the board's approval, of course, to give it a chance. And so when it first started, Mission Redemption was the perfect name for it. And that's because it wasn't about just cleaning up camps. It was about changing people's lives. All of a sudden, there was a sense of pride. When you give people, empower them to make a difference where they live, there's a sense of pride. Now, I brought Rodney along because I wanted to give him acknowledgement and credit. He was, when this first started, I was driving the truck, and it was me in these bags in the camps, okay? And they're pretty heavy. And sometimes it's raining and it's wet, and I can't lift them, you know? I mean, the people would come and help me, but when it's wet, everybody's kind of hunkered down. And Rodney was doing community service, and so he helped me, and he stayed, and he continued to help me. And he continued for like a year or something to help me. He was always there. And I petitioned my board and said, could we make this some kind of position for him? And because he's earning it, he's doing a really hard job. And so we hired him, I don't know, how long ago was it?
A year and 3 months ago.
A year and 3 months ago. And since then, Rodney is now housed. And it was his idea to put on a tie and come here because he wanted to show you guys what a difference this program makes. It's Mission Redemption. So thanks. So I didn't bring my glasses.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, oh,
these are
this.
various cleanup shots of before and after.
Okay, this was South Bend, and South Bend had that pile actually was at one point they cleaned it up, and it was probably 20 feet high. And somebody, an unhoused individual at the very beginning of this program, cleaned it up. And then this happened again. And this was the people that I know that are hard workers. I offer them gas cards or food cards so that they can join me and help clean this up. And the people that cleaned this up weren't the people who did it. But nevertheless, they have pride and they love the forest and they want to be a helpful part of the community. And for some of them, they can't get jobs because their lifestyle is too hard right now. It was super hard for Rodney to make it all the time to work, but he did it. And this is their way of giving back. Yeah, this one's impressive, right? This was in the beginning when I was using my own truck and the transmission kind of slipped. So I stopped, and thank God the senior center started letting me use their truck. So as you can see, there's people that are they're coming along and they're helping. People that'll just pass by will help load up the bags. And I believe this program has grown to where we looked at the numbers, and I think it's like 20,000 pounds of garbage from the encampments during a month is what we averaged this past year. And what also helps with this is we are going to new encampments. So that's going to help us with the pit counts because there are encampments that we didn't even know existed that don't come to outreach because they're so far. But because of this program, we're learning about these encampments and making relationships with them so that we can end up getting the funding that we need for this community.
So this slide shows some of the supports that you offer, including providing food and shoes for folks who help with the cleanup.
Yeah, our program has grown so much from, there's food, there is all kinds of, when we first started giving items out, essential items people needed to live, somebody told me, wow, I don't have to steal this now. That's what they said. That's the reality of it. That was something they needed to eat and survive. And so we're giving them survival items, and this is what they get when if you give me garbage 4 weeks in a row, I will give you a solar phone charger or one of those tents. But what I found is people didn't even want to do it for that. They just wanted to do it.
That's great. So we have awarded Mission Possible and Daphne Green Ribbon Awards in the past, and certainly very well deserving. So happy to hear about this program. Would you like to share anything, Ron?
I like to get people motivated to clean it up. Clean it up, I come and get it. 241,450 this year to date.
That's great. And looking at our numbers, the support from the authority ends up being about $18,000 a year currently, and it's been pretty steady the last couple of years, so not increasing too much. But I really, really deeply appreciate this ongoing effort. It's so important to the whole community, everybody involved. Thank you. And now, Dominic, you can come up and our latest addition to this suite of programs that we've been talking about is the voucher program. And Dominic, just
Thank you all so much for believing in us, giving us a chance.
Thank you for your continued work.
All right. Yeah, so Ted asked me to come in and speak on behalf of the voucher program that we set up roughly about a year ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer. So in that time, code enforcement has had an opportunity to issue one voucher. An elder lady actually reached out to code enforcement. She was overwhelmed with the excessive hedge growth on her property. And then the circumstances leading up to that was her husband had cancer, and it was probably a 1.5 year battle before he ended up passing away. So I think things got quite a bit out of hand on her property with the hedge and whatnot. And then just due to her being on a fixed income, her age, she wasn't able to manage it. And then ultimately she had her brother who was in his 70s. He came down from Oregon and I think was able to do the physical trimming of it, but she just could not physically get it from her property to the transfer station, or due to her fixed income on Social Security, cover the costs. So through that, we were able to issue the voucher and get that covered. And then also code enforcement was able to reach out to a coordinator, a volunteer coordinator, and actually got the labor over there, got people to donate their time hauling the brush to the transfer station. And then of course we covered that with the voucher. So to me, this is an excellent example of what I had in mind coming in, working on this voucher program and seeing it actually come to use, and really that the heartfelt thank you that lady had for that ability for us to help her like that. So it's super fantastic. But you can see in the couple photos there, it was quite a large volume of overgrowth. But and you can see with a little bit of the home, historically, it's a well-maintained home. And for that lady to be in that situation of her home in such disarray, and then for us to be able to come in and get her out of that situation. And I think now she could probably maintain it and keep it good from going forward. So I just want to thank you guys for that voucher program. Thank you, Ted, for helping us get that set up. And hopefully moving forward, we'll get some more candidates that be appropriate to issue them that, get some more success.
Yeah, Dom, this is great. These are the kind of hopes that we had when we talked about this a year or so ago and created this program. Kind of leaving it in your hands to make that, have that freedom of decision making to find the right people to use these vouchers on is this is the perfect example. I'm so happy that you brought this to us to see some real successes for the program. So glad to see it. Glad we could do it for this lady in the community, and glad that you had the freedom to use those vouchers to do something like this. So thank you for bringing that to us, letting us know what's going on. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
It's about making people's lives better and helping people who can't do for themselves. So very good work.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's. I mean, I'm just I feel lucky to be able to be in a position to have facilitated it. I mean, it's all of us that chip in and make this work. I have noticed here recently with the ABA program, I've been fielding a few calls from other jurisdiction code enforcement officers calling to inquire about, what do you do with this? How do you dispose of that? And what's glaring obvious with them is none of them have a relationship with their solid waste board. They're just absolutely out of that mix, whether they're AVA commissioners is a different group of people or whatever. But as a code enforcement officer, not having a working relationship with the director of solid waste, with the commissioners of the solid waste board, doesn't make sense to me because you guys are such a huge resource and it just overlaps. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how often you interact with other directors of transfer stations and whatnot throughout the state, but it seems like an issue for other jurisdictions. So
Well, given the nature of code enforcement and what seems to be and is the major, obstacles that we face, having that relationship is key to our success. And a lot of what we have to deal with would be impossible if it wasn't for that relationship too. And have that ability to call upon and get things like vouchers, or at least have that direct connection, especially when you're talking about vehicle disposal, other things like that. So appreciate the time that you put in, and Ted also, the time that has gone into this relationship and building the trust, as well as building the operational interplay that you have developed. It's made it very successful. Appreciate that very much.
likewise, it's a good. We got a good in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, let's keep it going. And I really appreciate Dominic. He's our eyes and ears on the ground. And when we see something out there, we of course don't have collection crews or things like that, but we can certainly point Dominic in the direction and say, could you please check this out and tell us how we should deal with it? Good advisor in many, many ways.
thank you. Any other questions or?
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our overview of our programs addressing solid waste related blight and illegal dumping. And so I think that just leaves the first item of the meeting remaining.
The resolution, 2024.02, honoring Blake Inscore's service as chair of Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority.
This is a very well-deserved award, as Blake has been, as we jokingly call, the chairiest of chairs, and that he's served more time being the chair of this agency than any other person alive. And I really appreciate all of the effort he put into that. But having heard the accolades at the city council meeting last night, which went on for an hour and 45 minutes, just singing Blake's and Kelly's praises. But what I didn't realize is while he seemed to be giving 100% of his time to the Solid Waste Authority, he was also giving 100% of his time to his church, to the city council, and to pretty much everything he was doing. So how he ended up being here, I thought I was talking to one person, but little did I know when I was talking to him, there were 6 or 7 other bits of him working throughout the community. So really great efforts. Here's a couple pictures. He helped us sort through our recycling challenges when the recycling markets were collapsing. We needed to readjust what we were collecting. And he was always an enthusiastic supporter of the programs that we have. And on the right, we have a picture that we ended up using in several ads where Blake was promoting the household hazardous waste collection events that we have each year. So I could read the text of the resolution if you'd like, or you could just move along, whatever you would.
You can read it in for the record on it?
I'd be happy to. Resolution 2024-02, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority honoring Blake Inscore for his service and leadership as chair for the years 2016 through 2018, 2020 through 21, and 2023 to 2024. Whereas Blake Inscore has served as a commissioner of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority since January 16, 2016. Whereas Blake Inscore served a record-breaking 7 terms as authority chair since 2016, making Mr. Inscore the chairiest of authority chairs. Whereas Blake Inscore actively participated in committees to consider ways to reduce the amount of trash in Del Norte's recycling streams, and in outreach efforts to reduce use of plastic bags and to reduce and promote proper management of hazardous waste. And whereas Blake Inscore served during periods of many significant authority motions, including actions that extended the transfer station operations agreement with Hambro WSG, including securing an additional 12 years of landfill capacity at Drive Creek Landfill, successfully appealed the threat complexity rating to reduce the WDR fees associated with the Crescent City landfill, resulting in an annual savings of $32,446. As I mentioned, that it's already gone up to $40,000 a year savings. Allowed stormwater monitoring and reporting at the Crescent City landfill to be reduced, resulting in an annual savings of approximately $4,000 each year through 2036. Having reduced the proportion of trash and contaminants in Recology Del Norte's recycling programs, and as described under the authority's collections franchise agreement, contracted for and completed the repairs of sections of the floor and ramp at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, negotiated and updated the memorandum of understanding, job descriptions, and pay ranges for authority employees, and oversaw the authority's financial navigation out from under the significant debt associated with the closure of the landfill and the construction of the Del Norte County Transfer Station to a position where the authority assets exceeded liabilities for the first time in fiscal year 2022-2023. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority Board hereby acknowledges the diligence and dedication Blake Inscore exhibited during his years of service as an authority commissioner and chair, and then presuming it passed and adopted by the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority on this day.
Thank you, Ted. I guess we need a motion to
Accept the
approve that resolution. I will make that motion.
I will second that.
Have a motion and a second.
Well deserved.
Any other public comment? Having none? Pull the vote, please.
Commissioner Short,
Enthusiastic, yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Absolutely, yes.
Acting Chair Wilson.
Absolutely. I know when I thought of solid waste, I always thought of Blake. Hey, seven times sitting in this chair. You know, that's hard to ever conceive that someone's going to beat that mark. That concludes our agenda, and we adjourn.